Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mystic Mania. I'm Tanya, and I live with bipolar disorder. This is my blog. In this episode, I'm going to talk about my diagnosis and how it changed my life. It was kind of a journey, a little bit of a trip, but I finally made it to accepting it, and I'm going to give you some tips and a little bit of advice. So stay tuned. I was first told I had bipolar disorder by a therapist back in 2002. I was about 22 back then, and I just didn't want to accept it. She was just the therapist, so I kind of took it like, well, you're not the psychiatrist, so, maybe I don't have bipolar disorder. I just didn't want to accept it. So I stopped going. And I had a lot of manic episodes after that. So, 2002, I was diagnosed in a sense, but just didn't want to believe it, which is very common with mental illness. Fast forward to a year ago, which was 2020, and I was diagnosed by a psychiatrist with bipolar disorder. Um, at first, I didn't want to believe it, but I had no choice because I hadn't been, diagnosed in a way back in the day. And so, I was like, okay, this is the second opinion. I have to believe it. Um, it was hard too because I was at that point where I knew I couldn't handle my life the way it was going. And getting diagnosed was, I don't know, it was kind of good in a way because then I was like, oh, that's why I did this or that's why I did that. And I knew that if I got on the right medicine and if I did the right things, that I could live a full, beautiful life if I wanted to. And so I took the diagnosis and I started doing research on bipolar disorder. So, how did I finally get diagnosed with my psychiatrist? That was where the journey was. It was in the stress and the psychosis. That was when I knew I needed real help. So, I went to a psychiatrist. Actually, I went to my doctor, my just my regular doctor. And it was because I wasn't sleeping. I was out of control. I was having panic attacks every minute, and I just didn't know what was wrong with me. And I really thought it was my heart. I didn't even think it was bipolar disorder. I thought it was my heart because my heart was racing so much. So I thought maybe I'm having, a heart attack, not a panic attack. So I went to my doctor, and my doctor was really worried about me. My blood pressure was through the roof. And I was just panicking. And I was like, look, I think my heart, something's wrong with my heart. I need an EKG. And the way the nurse practitioner treated me, the way she talked to me, it was like she was doing an evaluation, a psych evaluation, just asking me very personal questions and staying back, kind of worried. And then when the doctor walked in after she gave him her notes, he kind of walked in with his hands crossed, took some space, and it was obvious that they were scared, that they thought like something's wrong with this girl. So I tried to convince them that it wasn't anything in my mind, that I was fine, that it was my heart. And I begged for an EKG. I got one and it came back normal. And then my doctor put me on Lexapro. So they took it as a mental disorder, gave me the referrals to go to a psychiatrist, and that's how I went to a psychiatrist. Now, I was going through such a stressful time at this time that, you know, when she was asking, the nurse practitioner was asking questions, it was obvious as I was answering them that like my life was overwhelming. And it was tough because you're sitting there thinking it's your heart, and then the next thing you know, they're prescribing you Lexapro. And it was eye-opening. I would say that I'm very lucky that I was able to get a psychiatrist so quickly, because it was weird. It was like the doctor really believed I needed one, so that made it quicker. And so I was just really lucky. I know a lot of people wait a long time. And I would say if you're waiting for a psychiatrist, if you're in the waiting, see if you could get a therapist. Now, you could try BetterHelp, and with BetterHelp, you could actually get medicine through using BetterHelp going through Lemonade. I know, but it's something that's interesting to look into. There's a lot of these where you could pay to get a therapist, and I highly recommend them, especially if you're waiting for your insurance or you're just in a waiting line. I was in a waiting line now for 2 years waiting for a therapist. So finally, I went with BetterHelp, which really did help. And I would say that getting a therapist really does help to keep your mind at ease, to keep you on a path. It just like really gets your mind straight. So I do recommend getting a therapist. So you could go with some of these new sites where you even get to pick your therapist. So it's pretty interesting. One piece of advice I would give people is that if you're getting an evaluation from your psychiatrist, be very, very honest. There is a fine line between bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, other mental disorders, ADHD, autism, so they want to get it right. And I know a lot of people who were misdiagnosed with depression, but really they had bipolar disorder. So, even doing your research before you go in, like what could I have? Or doing some tests online, some quizzes, and just seeing what the quizzes and tests think you have. And then look those up. That way when you're there, you're prepared. You're like, okay, as you're in those questions, and he's like, okay, so you're very depressed. Sounds like you have depression. You could say, well, I also have, manic episodes, or sometimes I feel totally elated. And then they would know you could have manic, you could be manic, you could have bipolar disorder. But without being honest, you're really not going to get a proper diagnosis. And so I would say, be very honest, be very detailed, take the time that you're given. Usually you're given like a half hour to an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and that's your time. That's your time to say, this is how I feel, this is what I've been going through, and I need my future to be, on the straight and narrow. And I want to feel like I could use all that creativity and all of the insights that we get as bipolar disorder people, and use that for good and not for bad, not for chaos. After my diagnosis, I went on 3 medicines. So I was on Lexapro because of my doctor. So he kept me on that. And then I was put on Abilify for psychosis because that stressful period I was going through caused psychosis. And, that's what the doctor and nurse practitioner were seeing at that appointment. They were seeing the psychosis. And now I look back and see it too. And then I also got put on Lamictal, which is lamotrigine. Lamictal is the brand name. I know that it's working, but I can't explain how. But I just know it's a mood disorder medication. It's not even prescribed for bipolar disorder usually, but when it is, I just feel like for me it works. And then Abilify for psychosis. So those are the 3 drugs, and then Xanax for panic attacks. I mean, who doesn't want some Xanax for, that emergency moment when you're having a panic attack? And I rarely take Xanax because it puts you to sleep, and even though it makes you feel really relaxed, I found that like a cup of coffee relaxes me, just like there's other things. So I've tried to not use the Xanax, but it's really nice to have it as an emergency because it only takes about 15 minutes and you are just feeling so much better, so much more calm and relaxed. And so I definitely recommend that everybody out there to talk to your doctor and tell them, like, especially if you do have panic attacks, you need something for emergencies. But if you're just someone who's having these moods and you're having the mania and the depression, make sure that you're on the right medicines. Because if you go on a depression medicine with bipolar disorder, it could actually, it could make you worse. It could make you suicidal. And back in 2002, when I was seeing my therapist, She actually put me on Zoloft, Wellbutrin, Prozac, and those made me even worse. And you have to wait for them to work. So as you're waiting, you're just depressed, and then you're even more depressed being on the drugs, and then you can't figure out what's wrong with you. So that's why I'm saying, a lot of people with bipolar disorder get diagnosed with depression first. And so if you're honest and know if you come equipped with education on different mental illnesses to see what you feel, and you're not going to go into the doctor's office like, oh, I'm manic, I have bipolar disorder, or I'm seeing things, so I'm schizophrenic. You don't want to do that. You just want to be equipped with some education so that when they're asking questions, you kind of know how to answer them to get the proper diagnosis. A few more things. I would say that the medicine itself, the three medicines I'm on, um, and having that Xanax for emergencies, I would say that I feel my life has changed tremendously. I feel so much better. I feel calm and collected most of the time. I still get a little bit of the symptoms where I could tell, something's not right. I'm too irritable. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm not sleeping. Those things still happen, but not to the degree that they used to happen. They don't turn into delusions, they don't turn into me getting paranoid and just getting overwhelmed with life, or so depressed that I'm fantasizing about suicide, which is sad. I mean, no one should live like that. But I did for a really long time. So I just want to say that if you take your medicine, you will feel better. You just have to find the right medicine cocktail, the right combination, and just keep going, and I'm not a doctor. I just am making, my suggestions on how to get the right diagnosis, how to get the right meds, but I am in no way pushing any of the ones that I just talked about. That's my cocktail, and that works for me. And I hope that you find the right cocktail for you. I just want to end with that I don't feel that I suffer from bipolar disorder. I feel like I live with it. And you'll hear that a lot in the bipolar community, that we're living with bipolar, not suffering from it. And it's because, it's actually, I don't want to say it's not as bad as people think, because it's really bad to live with. I mean, you have to you have to be there for yourself at all times. You have to be there to monitor yourself and to take the right drugs and to keep yourself in line. So it's tough, it's stressful. But at the same time, you don't have to suffer. You could get on the right medicine, and you could do therapy and have the right friends and family there to support you. Really take care of yourself, but you don't have to suffer with it, and it's not going to define you. It's just a part of who you are, and it's okay. And I call this show Mystic Mania because I truly believe that in our manic episodes, we are so insightful. And I believe that when we're depressed, we're also insightful. And, we have these extremes for a reason, to really reach the depths and to reach the heights and to bring it together into something beautiful to share with the world. So I just want to say thank you for being here and listening to my story. This is my diagnosis story. I'm going to share lots of stories in the future about bipolar disorder, and I hope that they help you. And I just want to end with, I truly believe that there's magic in the highs and insight in the lows. Rock your magic.